In the heart of the Amazon jungle, nestled within its verdant greens, lies the town of Araraquara, a place where Magdalena Mukutui and Manuel Renoc lived with their 4 children. The town was steeped in a haunting history, for it was here in the 1930s that a Colombian president sanctioned the construction of a penitentiary. But this was no ordinary jail. Its walls were formed by the wild, the merciless Amazonian jungle, its bars the swampy, unforgiving terrain. There were no locked cells, no oppressive concrete structures. Instead, the inmates lived under the vast skies, threatened by deadly snakes, stalking jaguars, and lethal flora. Those brave, or desperate enough to attempt escape, often found it to be a fatal decision. The town's inhabitants, many of whom were descendants of these hardened convicts, grew up learning the ways of the jungle. Manuel was once the governor of a nearby indigenous reservation, but threats from guerrillas forced him to flee Araraquara. His hopes lay in building a safer life for his family in the buzzing metropolis of Bogotá, the capital of Colombia. It was May 1, 2023, when Magdalena and her children decided to join him. They boarded a small 6-seater airplane in their town, destined for San José del Guaviare, the nearest regional capital. The voyage called for a flyover of the vast jungle expanse. But as they soared over the winding curves of the Apaporis River, the tranquility shattered. The plane started to plummet. The pilot radioed in, voice terse with an announcement of engine failure. The pilot made a valiant attempt to land on the river, but there was no time. Their next best bet was to crash land onto the leafy canopy, but the formidable trees did little to soften the impact, and the plane hurtled to the ground. The crash was catastrophic, claiming the lives of the pilot and another passenger. But miraculously, Magdalena and her 4 children survived. The children were relatively unscathed, but Magdalena had been gravely injured. For 4 agonizing days, she held on, but eventually she succumbed to her injuries. In her final moments, she gave her children a crucial command: leave the wreckage and fight for survival. Their bravery was about to be tested in ways they could never have imagined. The minute the flight went off the radar, the authorities had braced themselves for the worst. A plane lost, passengers presumed dead. It was 16 long days later that a group of indigenous people stumbled upon the aircraft's carcass, where they found 3 lifeless bodies. But what of the children? Their absence was as much a puzzle as the traces they left behind: a half-eaten apple, a forgotten hair tie, an empty bottle, and discarded diapers. Clues that they were alive. But where had they gone? Thrown into the direst of circumstances, 13-year-old Leslie was suddenly saddled with the immense responsibility of keeping her siblings alive, in the wild, merciless Amazon rainforest, all on her own. Fortunately, Leslie was born and raised in the jungle. She could navigate the terrain by observing the play of sunlight filtering through the trees. She knew how to identify the broken branches that marked passable paths, and she had the knowledge to pick out edible mushrooms from their toxic counterparts. The forest that might seem treacherous and unfathomable to a city dweller was her childhood playground. The indigenous communities, of which she was part, had the innate ability to traverse barefoot through dense vegetation for up to 19 miles a day. These were the lessons Leslie had been raised on, lessons that now held the key to her and her siblings' survival. At the age of 13, Leslie courageously led her siblings, 9-year-old Soleini, 4-year-old Tien Noriel, and 11-month-old Kristen Nariman, on a dangerous journey into the jungle that would defy all expectations. With a baby in her arms, Leslie remained focused solely on their survival. Their sustenance came from whatever the jungle offered. They ate huansoco, a fruit akin to passion fruit, and milpeso seeds, rich in oil and vitamins. The baby was nourished with a mix of water and yucca flower, salvaged from the airplane wreckage. Lacking a baby bottle, Leslie used a leaf to trickle the yucca mixture into the baby's mouth. As darkness fell, they sought shelter under a mosquito net and a plastic tarp, covered with a layer of banana leaves, creating a makeshift abode in the heart of the wilderness. The children's path was not a solitary one. A stray dog had found them, becoming a steadfast companion and silent protector during their extraordinary journey. But the jungle, with its unforgiving nature, eventually claimed him, and the dog vanished as if swallowed whole by the wilderness, leaving the children without their loyal friend. Within the dense thicket, darkness was a constant companion. Sunlight was but a foreigner here, barely permeating the leafy canopy overhead. The dim visibility restricted their sight to barely 70 feet, turning every step beyond that into a potential slip into oblivion. What the children couldn't possibly know was that their survival had turned into a personal quest for the President of Colombia himself. Upon the discovery of the plane wreckage, Gustavo Petro had excitedly announced on Twitter that the children were found. However, as the hours passed, there was no official confirmation from the military. The truth was that an overzealous official had heard rumors from an indigenous community and prematurely assumed the children had been located. The president had to withdraw his tweet, facing a backlash for his hasty announcement. But rather than retreat, Petro declared it a national priority to find the children and ordered the military to leave no stone unturned in their search. Almost 20 days had passed since the children had disappeared. Pedro Sanchez, the commander leading the search, believed in their survival, attributing it to their indigenous roots. He held faith in Leslie's ability to keep them alive. Search patrols crisscrossed hundreds of miles of jungle, their movements tracing a vast web across the map, their persistent search driven by hope. Yet, despite their tireless efforts, the children remained elusive. With each passing moment, time grew ominously short. The search for the lost children stretched on for so long that it gradually faded from the nation's collective consciousness. The government became embroiled in a wiretapping scandal and financial irregularities that monopolized the media's attention, leading to a general loss of interest in the ongoing search. But none of these distractions fazed Commander Sanchez. Every time the phone rang, he answered with the same sense of urgency, adamant that the search would not end until the children were found. He reasoned that if the children were no longer alive, their bodies would have been located. The fact that they hadn't indicated that they were continuously on the move. In the meantime, the youngest turned 1, and the 4-year-old turned 5. Milestones marked in the heart of the hostile jungle. Indigenous communities lent their invaluable support to the soldiers in the search effort. Without their guidance and cooperation, navigating the dense jungle would have been an impossible task. Before stepping foot into the wilderness, the indigenous people sought permission from Mother Nature through their prayers, honoring a tradition steeped in respect for the natural world, rituals and beliefs that were often beyond the comprehension of outsiders. There was a prevailing fear that the children, upon encountering the soldiers, might panic and retreat further into the jungle. To counter this, the children's grandmother recorded a heartfelt message in their native Huitoto language, reaching out to Leslie and her siblings. This message was broadcast through the thick canopy of the jungle, in hopes that the familiar language would guide the children back to safety. The indigenous communities held a belief that the area's wandering tribes may have invoked ancient spiritual powers to shield the children from the authorities' sight, desiring for the young ones to become part of their tribe. Such a possibility had crossed Commander Sanchez's mind too, the idea that an isolated tribe might have stumbled upon the children and adopted them. This notion, he figured, was preferable to considering the grim alternative. Yet, after 40 relentless days of searching, the combined efforts of the military and indigenous teams finally bore fruit. They discovered the siblings, weary and undernourished, but very much alive. Leslie, in her determined effort to keep her siblings alive, had achieved her aim and in the process became a figure of national admiration. Survival had been possible thanks to the children's deep-rooted knowledge of the jungle, knowledge imparted by their indigenous families. They had truly proven themselves as children of the jungle. After locating the children, soldiers whisked them away from their forest home via helicopter, delivering them to a hospital in Bogotá. Medical staff worked tirelessly to rehydrate the siblings, their bodies so delicate that they couldn't handle regular food. After a 3-week stay, the children, now on the road to recovery, were finally discharged from the hospital. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate your time and hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked what you saw, be sure to check out the other great content on our channel. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more. Thank you again, and see you in the next video.